And greetings. Well, that's a little crooked. Happy, what is it, Tuesday? Yes, happy Tuesday to all of you. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand here on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre, Todd Erzen. And all of you, thank you for hopping on board. That was a little crooked too. Everything's a little crooked here so far this morning. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can email the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter @Steve Deace Show. And if you are anti-censorship, which you should be, look for us instead on places like MeWe, Parler, and Gab, and get clips of the show that you watch for free later on at rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. And yes, I share all of your daily laments and email frustrations with the slower than molasses upload and encode times than that they have over at Rumble. Put it this way, I run faster than they upload clips of this show at Rumble. Is that bad?
I don't. You might have some game on that front.
It's
I don't
bad.
want to undersell you.
Well, we dwarfs are sprinters.
But I was about to go there.
It's bad. That's bad. But I guess that's the price for no censorship, I guess. All right. So rumble.com/Steve Deace Show is where you can get to, where you can go to get unfiltered and uncensored clips of the program. All right. Coming up here today. Oh, don't forget as well, DEACE. Again, that's how to spell the last name. Coming up today, we're going to get an update on vaccine data from the one and only Alex Berenson. He will be joining us here at the bottom of this hour for a segment you do not want to miss. I've had a handful of you. That's like the third word I could not pronounce already today. We're 2.5 minutes into the show. 3 things were crooked and I can't talk. We're off to a great start. Guys, your thoughts?
Maybe running is your thing.
Then if that's my thing, we're all doomed here. How are you? Yes. So I've had like half dozen of people of you email me in the last just day looking for vaccine data about pushing back on your place of work or your kid's school. And I think my answer to all of you has included just look at the last 3 weeks of posts on Alex Berenson's Twitter feed. All right. And so we'll give you a summation of those things in real time coming up here at the bottom of this hour. Next hour, we will continue as we wind it down. We've got 2 chapters left to go for our series during Fake News or Not, looking at our best-selling book, Faucian Bargain, the most powerful and dangerous bureaucrat in American history. And then we will have Pop Culture Tuesday, and we will look at the latest release from the MCU, Black Widow. We'll give it a review, and then as spoiler-free as we possibly can if you have not seen it yet. And then also talk about where we think the MCU is going, because I frankly do not know. I have no clue where this is going, and I'm getting to the conclusion it may not be going anywhere. They're not sure ultimately where it's going yet, and they just want to expand it into different areas and introduce different characters, and that's okay too. And so maybe we should recalibrate our expectations along those lines. So we'll get into all of that and more coming your way. But we begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by...
Run away! Run away! Run away!
Apparently, that's the strategy for Texas Democrats as they broke quorum yesterday, ran away from the State House, got on a charter airplane, and flew to Washington, D.C. in order to stop the GOP members in Texas from having enough lawmakers in attendance during a special session to pass a bill that would strengthen voter laws in the state. As you can see from this pristine photograph of the Texas Democrats on their charter flight, none of them are wearing masks. At the White House, Press Secretary Jen Psaki says voter ID laws are
the worst challenge to our democracy since the Civil War.
And now an update from David French's America.
The baby has been able to latch, but I've not been able to produce any milk. It's okay, because we're going to supplement the feeding with formula so that my baby's still getting the nutrients that they need, but I'm still feeling hopeful. I appreciate you so much for all your work.
I appreciate you also, baby. I couldn't have done it without you. A lot of conflict going on inside of me right now.
There's a part of me that sees this pregnancy as like masculine. It's like very much for me not a feminine feeling.
He just left the hospital right now.
Yeah, so they totally thought Patrona was the pregnant one and not me. It didn't even speak to me. And I just felt like
They just made assumptions, making an assumption from the very beginning without even asking our names, not asking a thing about us.
I'm the one that's waking up every hour having to pee and like the ones that have been throwing up and like going through all this crap.
The thought that I exist with a baby inside me never crossed their mind. Put yourself in my shoes, like how would that make you feel? DC is forcing me to label myself as the mother, and that's not the case. Patrona is the mother.
Trans women can be mothers.
In case you lost track there, these are two individuals from Washington, D.C. named Patrona and Moderna. One is a dude pretending to be a woman, and the other is a woman pretending to be a dude. The one who is a biological dude is upset because, aside from not being able to produce breast milk for the baby in question, Washington, D.C. is forcing the biological mother to register as the child's mother, even though the biological mother identifies as the child's father, and the child's biological father identifies as the mother. In case you thought woke teachers were bad, listen to this. Writing in the Journal of Medical Ethics last month, bioethics professor Maura Priest said, quote, taking LGBT patient testimony seriously also means that parents should lose veto power over most transition-related pediatric care, end quote. This weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia, city officials tore down not only the statue of Robert E. Lee, but also the statue of Lewis and Clark, because racism or something. Dispatches from across the pond, a London, UK library has apologized for holding an event to encourage children to read, during which an actor dressed in a bare-bottomed monkey costume with a fake penis. Learning Chinese today, today's phrase is rainbow dildo butt monkeys are a blessing of liberty.
彩虹假羊具屁股猴子是自由的祝福。
The country of France has fined Google nearly $600 million over the use of publishers' content under European Union copyright rules. The company faces additional fines of up to $1 million per day if it doesn't comply within the next 2 months. The issue stems from how Google compensates news organizations within France for use of their content. Back stateside, the Food and Drug Administration is adding a warning on the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine related to an autoimmune condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which attacks the nervous system of those afflicted. Over the weekend, Arkansas Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson had this to say about the Biden administration's plans to send vaccine cultists door to door.
There's nothing dramatic about what the president said in itself. No one wants an agent knocking on a door, but we do want those that do not have access otherwise to make sure they know about and have the information. We want to have our churches involved. We want to have our communities, organizations, and if it means going into a community door by door and letting them know of this, then that's okay.
And finally, Branch Covidian logic.
Hey, have you noticed that influenza has all but disappeared? Well, what do you expect? We've been wearing a mask for the last year and a half. So why is COVID still spreading? Look, because COVID's different. Yeah, but it's transmitted in exactly the same way. It's airborne. It's more contagious. I get that. So are you saying that masks only work for flu, but not COVID? No, masks work for COVID too. So why is COVID still spreading then? Because a lot of people don't wear masks. So why has flu stopped spreading then? Because you're a conspiracy theorist and don't understand science.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. They got some big news recently. They're going to be the official sponsor of the Olympic track and field team. So if we cannot get the Erzin family to consume Built Bars now, in a few years when Ainsley is a part of this team, maybe we'll go ahead and turn you guys into customers. What do you think?
I like it.
You like that? All right. That's a goal. That's an aim to shoot for. And if you haven't tried Built Bar yet, you're really missing out. They know that flavor and nutrition doesn't have to be a choice. It's not either or, And also you've got the occasional limited time flavor. Make sure when you get a message on that, you take advantage, like the grasshopper cookie flavor. I ordered myself an extra box of those because they are that good, especially the next time they come out with chocolate chip cookie dough or coconut or coconut brownie chunk. Those two flavors are insanely good. The rest, pretty darn good too. Coconut almond, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, all of them covered in real chocolate. You're looking at up to 18 grams of protein per bar. Even the most decadent flavors don't give you more than 170 calories. Most of their bars are 130 calories or less. 4 to 8 net grams of carbs or sugar. You can't beat that, folks. And if you want to try it right now, get 15% off of your order when you go to Built, B-U-I-L-T, Built.com, 15% off of your order for the best protein bar of all time. When you use the promo code DEACE, D-E-A-C-E, D-E-A-C-E at Built.com. Again, that is Built.com. Coming up today in the overtime, a former U.S. attorney under the Trump administration has released a letter that he sent the former president, specifically making the allegation that he and his department directly reported voting irregularities in Pennsylvania to then Attorney General Bill Barr and were ignored or were told to ignore those voting irregularities. But hey, it's okay. Because a lot of you watching and listening to a show like this over the years have helped make millionaires out of people who told you shit like, well, Bill Barr paid the bagpipes. He's a badass. He played the bagpipe. That drink of water he took once on pull my pants up to my nips, dude. Wow, that's just a total badass. So you guys love that content. I mean, that's what most of the content is in my feed, so there must be a market for it somewhere. I mean, the stuff we do places like on this show or others on platforms like this just stick out in a sore thumb compared to the rest of our so-called media peers. Fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this must be what y'all love. Give me some of that crack, some of that meth. They get strung out on that. So it was cool. Bill Barr played the bagpipes once and you gave somebody, 500,000 Twitter followers for sharing that shit with you. That's great. Great. Meanwhile, he just knifed you every which way he possibly could for the last year and a half and is still the gift that keeps on taking. So we will discuss that today in the overtime at blazetv.com/Deace. Again, that is blazetv.com/Deace. Let's get to what was in Aaron's montage. And allow me to take a contrarian view.
Not allowed. You've never done that before.
Well, and I know it's
breaking some new ground here, yes, Copernicus.
Indeed. Thank you. Appreciate that. I want to see more. And if you want to save this country, you should agree with what I'm about to point out. I want more dildo butt monkeys. Rainbow dildo butt monkeys. My bad. Okay? Because we all know they come in various flavors. So I would like more rainbow dildo butt monkeys. I would like more of, and I got lost. I couldn't follow this one family's genealogy, and there's just 3 of them. All right, who's the mom? Who's the dad? Who became the dad and was the mom? I don't know. I do know, though, I want more. More. I want more of Democrats in red states just walking out of legislative sessions when they don't get their way, flaunting FAA administrative rules on masks that the rest of us still have to suffer through. I want more of it. I want all the cray-cray. I want it all. I want them to do this stuff like stack the courts. I want them to do it all. All of it. Let the freak flag fly. Don't just do what we did in the Trump years, where we just tweeted stuff to provide content for conservative media to feed you for money that you got stoned, drunk, and strung out on, but didn't actually draw the body count it was claimed to. They're kind of doing that right now. They're just doing it for Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow. Did you see the court proceeding the other day that they said in court that Rachel Maddow's audience assumes that what she is telling them is often not truthful information but slanted? Did you see that?
No.
It was kind of the Rachel Maddow version of that Alex Jones plea when he put in the affidavit for in his custody case that my audience knows that a lot of this is just for show. Okay. No. Nope. No, I don't want bioethics professors just writing this stuff in medical journals. I want them to do it to you. All of it. Get busy living or get busy dying. There aren't any lukewarm hells in politics. Jesus vomits, spews in disgust and disdain, lukewarm from his own mouth. I mean, we were just talking a few weeks ago at the level of local activism we have seen amongst our people across the country in just like the last month or two, right? Right? Is it because our people just decided, I should prioritize this more and take time out of my busy schedule and other leisurely pursuits to do so? Is that what happened? No, it's not what happened. What happened is they started stepping on your throat. I want them to press harder. Full throat. Let it all hang out. Bring it all out. Because I think that's the only way. That is the only way. And we need them to do it this year, frankly, because Republicans are going to have a very good year next year. It's just a matter of how good. And then they will not do a damn thing in 2023 once they're in office, because it'll be all the same people still in charge. Nothing will happen, at least not in Washington. Nothing will. It'll be just a replay of the post-Tea Party era. We just sit around and wait for how long before Republicans just negotiate with themselves because we can't shut the government down. Okay? Everything will just be done by executive order anyway. Haven't we seen this play before?
Yes.
We've watched this movie, right?
Yes.
Think Cocaine Mitch has a new line to snort? Or is he could probably just bust out the hits? Probably.
This is what you talked me away from excitement when I came in this morning talking about Texas and arresting legislators. And
there's a far better chance that entire episode has been game planned out by both sides to provide each of their bases the theater that they each desire than they will actually be ever arrested at any point in time. Far better chance.
We will repeal rainbow dildo butt monkeys
root and branch. We'll take the branch out of his root if we have to. Yes. Yes. No. It's clear with very, very limited exception. Trump attorney Jenna Ellis has apparently just discovered the RNC is bad. With very, very limited exception. This party is worthless and has been. So we actually need to be egged on negatively. We respond to negative reinforcement. And guess what, guys? I come to you today, if you've not already felt it, I now bring you glad tidings of great joy. Negative reinforcement is one of my special gifts. It's one of my spiritual gifts, in fact. My kids tell me I'm very good at negative reinforcement. Okay? We don't respond to positive reinforcement. We don't. So what we need is them to go as nuts and as far as possible in like this next year before Republicans then capitalize on it on the ballot box and we all go into a slumber And everything is just simply about whether Trump goes ahead and runs again in 2024 and not about anything else. While they still run the country and do whatever they want to us. We need them to do this all to us now so that we will see more Loudoun County Virginias. So instead of getting a half a dozen emails I don't have time to respond to asking me, how do I push back on vaccine mandates? I'm getting 100. We need them to go all in, all the way. No decorum. Have a sitting president sit 5 feet from the stage and have America's arguably largest, most powerful network, ESPN, just not acknowledge him while it acknowledges someone who did a guest star on some Nickelodeon show in 95 instead. More of that. More. Pile on the insults. Shovel more dirt in our faces. Whip it out. Urinate right in our mouths and tell us it's raining. Because we have proven anything short of that, we will look to slap condoms on societal collapse in order to make it safer. In the hopes that we may slow it down. No, man. Nah. Cut that thing off. It's violating me. Somebody told me recently I use too much crude sexual imagery in order to make very explicit and blatant points. Here's how I respond to complaints like that. This morning, I actually went into my Bible and searched for Hebrew and Greek words translated as harlot or whore. I found 88 of them. I found 88 instances where the Word of God uses that explicit language to describe us. So I'm in very good company. Grow a set. No. Go all the way. Do it all. All of it. Because anything short, and we won't do what is necessary to stop it. We won't. I've used this analogy before. You know, I've talked at times about some of the terrible things that happened to me growing up, but I learned a lot of great lessons too. And there were times that Dave was actually a great dad. That's what kind of made it even more problematic. He could be a great dad and then a terrible one, literally a terror. And he taught me a very valuable lesson that I have imparted many, many times in the years ever since. The reason there was so much bravery at the Alamo is there wasn't a back door. If there was a way out, they'd have counted the numbers and said, I don't know, man, I kind of feel like we should take the Santa Ana guy on when there's better odds. That'd be the smart play, sure. Right? But there wasn't a back door, so they had to stand their ground, okay? If we find any back door, anything, 2024, 2022, any back door. Oh, my school district's great. Any back door. My congressman's not on the take. Any back door. Any ejection. We're out. And I'm sympathetic to it. It's not our religion. It is theirs. We got lives. They don't. We have real families. They have to manufacture theirs. I get it. Totally get it. I understand we come at this with certain disadvantages. One of the major disadvantages we have is there's a lot more of us than them. So we have a tendency to just kind of look around at one another and say, hey, which one of us is going to do something here? You know what I mean? No. Cut the brakes out of the Democrat pace car. Cut the brake line. Don't let it, it can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Don't let it stop. All the way. I want a rainbow dildo butt monkey at every library in America. Every single one. Because that's how we'll make sure they're not at any of them ever again. Ronald Reagan once famously said, a recession is when your neighbor doesn't have a job. A depression is when you don't have one. Along the same lines, boy, it was real terrible what the Japs were doing to the Chi-Coms out there in the 30s. Terrible. Anyway, off to work I go. But it's downright tragic when they come and do it on your soil, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Bring the pain. Bring it. Bring the thunder. We've got the numbers, as the great prophet. Let's reverse what the great prophet Jim Morrison once said. We've got the guns and the numbers. Just way too complacent. So please, by all means, rub our noses in it. Try to force these injections on us physically. Please. Please. Because this passive-aggressive, soccer-style of politics, where we don't ever score or try to pull it out in a shootout, and every time we beat the defender to the ball, we're offsides, and if anybody bumps elbows, some little dainty ref comes up with his Austrian rules football semantics, and here's your yellow card. Hell no. I want the NFL and not this wokeified version. I'm talking John Facenda narrating NFL with the sweat coming off Lyle Alzado's white afro as the steam pours off. Dick Butkus wipes blood from you off his jersey. And during timeouts, Ken Stabler is so worked out, dude's got to get a drag from a lung dart. That's what we need. But it's made very clear. When we continue to purchase content like, Bill Barr played the bagpipes. When we continue to consume that, it's very clear we won't get there on our own. We're going to need dragged there. So I hope they grab us by the hair and try it tight and hard. Because then we'll respond in kind with the level of response that is deserved. Any thoughts on that pep talk, guys? What do you think? Just for the record, I came in a good mood this morning.
I'm struck that if you showed Aaron's montage, went back in time and showed it to the Americans on the street of 10 years ago, not even knowing if they were Republicans or Democrats, your average American, the response most of them would have given. This is like Loki, where Loki sees his future in the new Loki show, and it's just transforming for him. Most of those people would have been like the people on the subway in the, World War II Churchill movie when they're...
Darkest Hour.
Darkest Hour.
Yes.
And like, we'd fight them in the streets.
Yep.
You would have said that.
Yep.
And now it's here.
Yep.
And you do what Steve says all the time. I don't know. I got a pair of white walls on the other line. Folks.
Great analogy.
Folks. They're going to slash your white walls even if you buy them. They promise you.
Guys, the spokeswoman for the White House said yesterday, showing ID to vote is the worst assault on democracy since the Civil War. There will be no sharing or coexisting. This is a steel cage match. One person's walking out and the other isn't. That's it. That's all there is anymore. One ideology's coming out of that cage, the other is not. That's it.
The enemies, the invaders of antiquity, by and large, sought to destroy their enemies by destroying them. Progressivism, I believe, is different in that its chief aim, of course, is power. They don't want to kill you. They want to enslave you. We don't have time for trinkets like Bill Barr when your enemy is trying to enslave you. They don't have any power over you when you're dead. They want to enslave you.
Back with Hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace, Aaron McIntyre, Todd Erzin here with me as always, as are you. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox, which you can access by either emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. Look for me as well on MeWe, Parler, and Gab. And if you're looking for clips of the program that are uncensored and unfiltered, yes, but will also test your patience in terms of the upload time. So that's the best of both worlds, right? I mean, you get both an ethical, moral booster shot. You learn a lesson in patience by waiting for Rumble to upload the show. But then once it does, you get the payoff of no censorship. Like you could go to that other big streaming platform, right? And it uploads a lot faster, right? Mm-hmm. But you might get half a clip of this show every day after all the censorship kicks in, right?
Right.
So this is a little bit, we're learning about the perseverance of the saints here via Rumble. We should, in fact,
delayed gratification.
Yes,
as well.
I was
Builds
grousing
character.
about them in the first hour. I should, on second thought, realize they're teaching us a lesson in adulting. The trade-off for the slower upload and encode times at Rumble is we get total freedom, right? There's a certain adult lesson we're being taught there.
Sure.
So maybe I was looking at that wrong last hour. Rumble.com/Steve Deace Show is where you can mature, adult more, get more patience, and then avoid censorship. All in one. That's actually a pretty nice package they have going over there on second thought. All right. Rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. That's where you can get free clips of the show. If you listen to the podcast, we would appreciate it if you have not yet done these things. You know what? Even if you have, maybe it's like the vaccines. If you've already had COVID, get it anyway. I mean, just keep doing it. I don't know. Maybe you can, you know, we need a 5-star review booster shot. So you gave us a 5-star review a few months ago. We need another one now. Fair? Okay. Fair. All right. So whether you have given us one or want to give us another one, please keep those 5-star reviews coming, as well as the subscribe or follow button. Click on that on your podcast platform of choice. And thanks to all of you that have done those things for us already. You have done your part to help us continue to grow this program, to the dismay of many. And most of that dismay, frankly, is probably deserved. All right, coming up here at the bottom of the hour, we're going to get into Pop Culture Tuesday. We're going to talk about Black Widow. We'll give as spoiler-free of a review as we can, although the film is highly anticlimactic, so
what is there to spoil?
I don't even know what there is to spoil. The character's already dead, you know. So, but we'll do our best not to spoil much of anything that really isn't worthy of being spoiled in the movie anyway. We'll get into that and where we think the MCU is or is not going, coming up here at the bottom of the hour. Fake news or not, brought to you by our friends over at My Patriot Supply. Are you ready for the next big crisis out there? And who knows what it is? Right? We're seeing unrest in Cuba. You're seeing unrest in South Africa. And now we're talking about hyperinflation. What did I read today? Last month was the worst we've seen in any month in the country since 2008, leading up to the, what did I tell you? I saw a couple of months ago. I was concerned. I'm seeing a lot of the same signs of what happened when we had a market meltdown, a lending meltdown at the end of 2008. Right. It seems like we're kind of heading down that exact same road again. All right. Make sure you're prepared. And who knows, it could not even be something man-made we do to ourselves. It's just, you know, a natural disaster. So whatever happens, make sure you're prepared ahead of time. You get emergency food from My Patriot Supply, the nation's original Patriot preparedness company. Food that stays fresh for up to 25 years if properly stored, so that you don't have to worry about going hungry or standing in food lines. My Patriot Company is a company you can trust. 13 years of experience, over 41,000 4- and 5-star reviews from satisfied customers all over the country. And right now you can get 25% off of their popular 4-week food kit that gives you 2,000 plus calories a day, what you need to sustain you for up to 4 weeks in the result of something calamitous happening. Go to preparewithdace.com, preparewithdace.com, and make sure you're ready for in case you have to be ready. Preparewithdace.com. Again, 25% off at preparewithdace.com. Well, we've got 2 weeks left in this series we've been doing on Fake News or Not, looking back on our best-selling book, Faucian Bargain, the most powerful and dangerous bureaucrat in American history. I don't think you had a chance to see this yet, Todd. I did Jason Whitlock's show Fearless yesterday, and I came on to discuss the piece I had written for the Blaze over the weekend about Fox News and are they going to stand by Tucker Carlson now that he's going to war against the NSA and everything else. And we got into an overall, big picture conversation about the state of alternative/conservative media. And at the end, he asked me an interesting question I thought that I did not see coming. He asked me if I thought our book had influenced Tucker's willingness or capability to use his far larger platform to go pretty hard at COVID Stan and Dr. Fauci. And he said the reason he asked me that is because as someone who watches Tucker's monologue and show almost every single night, that's Jason talking, he thinks the answer to that question is yes. And my answer was, well, first of all, that's very kind. And we would love it if someone with a bigger, we didn't write the book so that the information would just stay in and amongst us. Right. I mean, we didn't do this show every day and put everything out on social media for the last year and a half just to keep it amongst ourselves. I mean, we all are doing broadcasting. We're trying to stop this from happening to the country. And dude, it's phenomenal if people with bigger platforms than us want to pick up the baton and say, hey man, let's amplify what you're trying to do in my own way, because in our own way, that's what we did. And I mentioned some names on Jason's show yesterday. I pointed out, hey, we've got more footnotes in this book than pages, which means we used other people's work more than we worked on this ourselves. And whether it's, and I name dropped Rational Ground, our buddy Jordan Schachtel, guys like Alex Berenson. I mean, these are all people we have a bigger platform than. And yet their work was instrumental in helping us with our own or formulating much of our own at the exact same time. So just as we used our platform that's bigger than theirs to amplify what the work that they had done, I mean, I'd be beyond honored if we found out at some point in the future that the guy swinging the biggest stick in all of conservative media right now used some of our own.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
That's what we did in this book. Right?
I'm convinced there was a period there where I watched Tucker's show. It's been a couple months, but I did try to watch it regularly because the tour de force it came to be. And I'm convinced not just the book, but our entire show. There's somebody working over there. Just the language that is used. It's of course we're talking about the same things, but I firmly believe that somebody's got their eye on what we're doing, and for that I say amen. Amen.
I would love it if we found out they did with us what we did with Jordan and Alex and all the people at Rational Ground. Just who's the married couple in Florida? Is it the Cabreras? Is that their last name?
Oh, yeah.
Who just did a lot of this independently on their own, right? And were just invaluable. Those kinds of people were invaluable in helping us to do even better what we were going to try to do anyway. So if we found out later on that some of our work got into the upper echelon, just as we took some other people's work into ours, I mean, that's to me that's how an ecosystem is supposed to work around here.
There's too much work to be done for us to be doing it all on our own. I mean, that's why my Twitter feed, I have my takes too, but I try to use it as a mini Drudge Report of what the Drudge Report used to be.
Yep.
You guys need to get a lot of information these days as quickly as possible, and that's what I try to provide.
So we have 2 chapters left to look at with Faucian Bargain. This week, we're looking at which chapter?
Branch Covidian Cult.
One of the, I think it's arguably the most important chapter in the entire book as we move forward as a people. Because you watched, I think, a template form here that is going to be emulated on issues across the board from this time forward. And so let's talk about it.
And listen, especially with the montage and what we just heard from Alex and heck, what we were talking about off air, Steve, I've had a lot of fun doing these chapters, asking some silly questions or getting at points in silly ways. No, I'm in a mood, and I'm deadly serious with this one. We need a what are you prepared to do diagnostic about this word cult. Because as we've been talking about, it's tranny madness that goes on. It's this, even though it's dying in some ways, it's growing in other ways. The cult keeps coming in new versions, and we need to. It's not just a word we use for rhetorical flair.
That's right.
What is it? What are we doing?
We quantified it this way on purpose because we believed it would be replicated on issues across the board going forward. So what's the next big fight after lockdowns and masks? So the next big fight is the vaccination fight. We're going to go door to door. Okay. You're a terrible person if you don't. We're not going to make an objective case. Look at the way that we were talking about this during the break. Look at the way they message on the vaccines. Anthony Fauci doesn't come out and say, "Hey, listen, okay, I understand that we just had a contentious election. I understand we're in a political atmosphere. My job's to rise above all of that, and I'm just interested in public health. And I don't care if who you voted for or how many times you voted or how you voted last year. I'm trying to stop COVID from wreaking havoc in our society. That's my job. And I think there's some misconceptions out there about these vaccines. I don't want to see this get politicized. So let me address a few of them. Is that what we're seeing? No, he goes on very partisan outlets. These are red states. You've politicized this. All the language is authoritarian in nature because cults are authoritarian. How dare you not sign up for the groupthink? How dare you think for yourself? How dare you ask contrarian questions? You're the one that's letting us all down. That's the same kind of language that is being used here, and it's going to be used in the future on virtually every debate that we want to have.
Yes, it is, Steve. So fake news or not, throughout human history, our species has typically been prone to ignore potentially cataclysmic events in favor of comfort and carrying on with our daily lives. However, for perhaps the first time, a segment of the American population is bound and determined to turn COVID-19 into the apocalyptic event it never was.
This morning, that's absolutely true news. This morning, you guys know my routine by now. When I'm not doing this for a living or getting prepped, if I'm listening to something outside of work, for wind down, it's usually something church related or sports related, right? So I'm at the gym today and I'm listening to a sports podcast. And the guest on the podcast is one of the biggest college football writers in the country, Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports. And Dennis Dodd is openly admitting on this pod that this is the first time he's been out of his home in 15 months. That he went to kind of a college football mucky muck gathering in Phoenix back in May, and then he's going to SEC Media Days here in a couple of weeks. And he goes, I'm frankly at this point I just need to see people, and I wanted to get philosophically disdainful at this. You know what I'm saying? But on a human level, my heart just broke for this guy, regardless of what his ideology is or his belief system is, and I'm guessing it's opposite of ours. He's still made in the image of God, man. Jesus came to set the captives free. This guy, highly educated, highly intelligent, is captive to his fear.
How old is he? Just so
I would guess he's somewhere in his 50s, I would guess. And maybe there's a story I don't know. Maybe he's pre-diabetic or something. But you would think you'd mention something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And he didn't. And so this is a guy whose life has been traveling around the country to cover the main game in college football every week, and he's done it most of our lives as fans, like all of Aaron's life. He's been around. Okay. You would think the natural human inclination, when that's your job, as a man, even Christian men struggle not to find their ultimate meaning in their jobs, right? Let alone secular ones. That's your identity. That's your worth. That's your calling. And something comes along to take that away from you. Isn't the natural human inclination to be, no, I'm not buying that because I don't want to give up. That's my idol in a way, right?
Right.
I don't want to give that up. Who's Dennis Dodd if I'm not a superior nationwide college football writer? Who am I? Instead, he willingly gave it up. Instead, he couldn't give it up fast enough. Instead, he was like, wow, what a shinier, more impressive idol. Let me clutch this one instead. And I do think that's new. I think it's certainly, if there's other moments in human history where the populace desired oppression, desired it for feign of an apocalypse, it's not the normal human inclination. It certainly isn't in the Western tradition. I mean, the reason why the story of Superman's origin, where his father Jor-El brings to the elders that the planet of Krypton is going to blow up and they don't want to listen, the reason that resonates is because that's how we typically respond, right?
Right.
I don't want to give my life up. I'm complacent at my leisure. I like technology. I like my life. I don't want to just hand all that up. No. We reversed the story. Now the scientist, Jor-El ran the test and the planet's fine. Hey, maybe some minor adjustments here or there, and I think we're going to be okay. But the elders of Krypton are like, no, this thing's going to blow up now. And now they want to run Jor-El out of town because he won't tell them that the planet will blow up. That's what we did with this. And listening to Dennis Dodd talk about this on this podcast this morning just hammered this point that you just made home. We should have, the natural, particularly male instinct, is to have to lock that guy in a room so he doesn't just get out and try to violate every COVID order to go to every game anyway, right? Nope. No, he's got to be begged and cajoled to come back out. That ain't the way this works. And if in our flesh and humanity we are at that level of automatic compliance, I take pride in my conformity. Then let me quote from you, the great prophet Loki. You were made to be ruled, and you will be.
I'm going to ask the final fake news or not now, and I don't want you to answer. And then we're going to go through the 7 planks of what a cult is with you.
Okay.
And then we're going to answer the final one.
Okay.
Fake news or not, Steve, cults can't be tolerated. They must be marginalized at the very least, if not terminated altogether. Remember that, because we want to define now what is a cult, and then be dead serious about what we need to do with it. You had 7 planks, Steve. Fake news or not. You might be a cult if you discourage, if not outright oppose, critical thinking. And I want you to answer these in light of this book came out when, Steve?
End of March.
Okay, we are now in the middle.
March 26th.
We are now in the middle of the July. We kind of wrote this at the tail end of people getting back to their lives. And so everything that's gone on between then and now only reinforces what a cult is, that it's full on this now. So answer that question in light of new examples that we wouldn't have had. Steve, fake news or not, cults discourage, if not outright oppose, critical thinking.
Absolutely true. And the reason why that's listed number 1 in the book is that is a number 1 universal context. In the Jehovah's Witnesses, don't study the Bible on your own. Go to Kingdom Hall 3 times and have somebody properly interpret it for you, and it must be a specific translation handpicked by their scam founder. All right, that's an example of what we mean. Okay, that you can't be trusted to think on your own because eventually you might outthink them. So they need to think for you.
So what's today's most absurd example in the news cycle this week about where critical thinking is not allowed by Fauci or another?
The conversation we were just having about the vaccinations. It starts from a position of compliance, not informing.
How about Leanna Wen?
That would be another one.
Yeah.
Okay. She's the former head of Planned Parenthood. They ran her out of there because she wasn't pro-baby killing enough, and now she thinks her job is to make life tougher on you for not agreeing to an injection that we really don't know yet what its true efficacy or danger is yet.
Steve, fake news or not, you might be in a cult if cults isolate themselves and their members from the outside world, sometimes even forcibly.
Indeed, Jesus tells his followers, you are in the world, but not of it. But I send you out into that world. I want you to mingle. I want you to marinate. I want you to spread this message. All right. Look at the way that the spirit of the age operates. Don't have a vaccine, separate that person. Don't want to get a positive test, separate that person. We isolate from people that are different than us, lesser than us, that we are superior than. Yes, true news.
How about Bubba Watson?
So here's a guy who's fully vaccinated.
Yes, this is
still has a breakthrough infection. He has a molecular level PCR test that confirms his infection. All right, so he's fully vaccinated, gets COVID, tests positive anyway, but can't travel to the British Open this weekend because he's fully vaccinated and still tested positive.
Steve, fake news or not, you might be in a cult if you claim to have special knowledge or that only the special can attain such knowledge.
That's right. The idea that there's a special book, a special incantation, there's something new that hasn't been thought of yet that we've come up with, that we've got a new spin. Hey, a guy comes along thousands of years or hundreds of years after your movement was originally followed or founded and has like a new spin on it, so follow this instead, okay? Or occultic practices that from Gnostic traditions. These are all examples of, without special kind of information, you just aren't one of the special people.
And aren't they doing that every time they basically talk about the latest variant scare? Because they're talking about, no, but ours goes up to 11. Most variants in the history of immunology, as we've said on this show, actually get weaker as a survival mechanism.
Yes.
They're just talking about somehow this is...
I'll give you an example from a non-COVID issue. The 1619 Project is an example of this. The idea that what you've read about history and everything yourself is not true. Here's some special knowledge you didn't know, which of course leaves out the fact that, for example, in the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson and the founders specifically castigated slavery and blamed King George for exporting it to the colonies. And it was going to pass, except from the votes by only 2 states, which meant the other 10 approved it. Okay? Like, they leave these kinds of context and things out, all right? And replace it instead with a new knowledge, a special knowledge. 1619 Project, critical racist theory, these would all be examples of this aspect of cultic behavior.
Steve, fake news or not, you might be in a cult if you put your loyalty to your leader above all else.
No question. That's the fearless leader routine. I mold myself to follow somebody, even when it opposes specifically my own conscience. That's what we saw, that level of dedication. Trust Fauci, all the trinkets that were sold last year, the songs, the videos, as if he was unassailable, as if he could not possibly ever have been incorrect about anything. And so I'll put my entire life into his hands. That's a blatant example of cultic behavior too.
And you've talked about if it wasn't for him, it would be somebody.
It would have just been somebody else.
That's important because with Donald Trump, whatever we thought about him, there was a unique set of qualities to him that were undeniable. With Fauci, is there anything unique about the man, which just goes to show the cultic power of him all the more?
No, obviously takes good care of himself because he seems pretty spry for 80 years old. That's kind of a unique characteristic to him. Beyond that, though, the mindset he has is no different than the mindset of those who are spying on Tucker Carlson, who spied on Donald Trump, who ban you from your own Facebook page now. It's not that he's legion. He's legion.
Steve, fake news or not, you might be in a cult if you seek to detach yourself from your families.
Always cults isolate you from your family. Every single time. Every single time. Because why? What was the first instrument of governance, of human governance God ever established on this earth? The family was. The family predates the church. The family predates the state. The family is the first form of institution of governance, meaning the regulation of behavior, the passing on of tradition and custom. The family was the very first one. If we want to indoctrinate you into a new discipline, into a new morality, into a new ideology and a new custom, we therefore have to separate you first and foremost from what? The institution that established your original ones. And so that's why they always seek to isolate you from your family every single time. And they'll tell you they're your new family.
I'm going to ask the last two because we're pressed for time, and then reset what I wanted and let you answer however you want to. Number 6, it was cults cross moral boundaries and at times encourage others to as well. And number 7, cults separate you from the true church. So now we have all 7 of those. So I ask you once again, knowing this is what a cult is, and we are being as sober-minded as possible as in applying that term, and now we have a diagnostic. Steve, fake news or not, cults can't be tolerated. They must be marginalized at the very least, if not terminated altogether.
Absolutely true news. And the number one reason why is they won't tolerate you. That's why they come to your door. That's why they bother you at airports. They won't tolerate you. That's why. You may have all your own rules of engagement. When you're up against an opponent that has their own and will do things their own way, your rules of engagement become pretty obsolete at that particular point in time, don't they?
Right.
And I think that we have to mobilize to fight the enemy we have, not the enemy we prefer to have or think we have or are more comfortable with, but the enemy we actually have. That's why mockery, scorn, ridicule of the stupidity of this foolishness should be wielded with reckless abandon. We should do a verbal, intellectual version. That's why did they tar and feather in the colonial era? Why did they do that? It was a metaphor. It was a symbol for this is so rotten, so dumb, so beneath us, such a petty, ridiculous level of tyranny. You're insulting us by thinking you could even impose this on this community. And we're going to make an example out of you. That's why they did it. We should be doing that verbally and philosophically with these sorts of ideologies. Merciless tar and feathering of scorn and mockery of their foolishness. People wouldn't dare think to admit out loud, wow, I believe really stupid crap like that. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't, let alone introduce rainbow butt monkey dildo man to your local library like we saw at the top of the program today, right?
Right.
That's number one. Number two, you have to go into the arena. See, this is one of the things that sets Tucker apart from a lot of his peers at Fox. They're aimed at a lot of the same targets he is. And when I'm comparing Tucker, I'm comparing him to the rest of the weekday primetime lineup. I know they've got some good radicals on there, like our colleague Mark Levin, our former colleague Dan Bongino, but they put all those guys on the weekends. I'm talking about who they put on when the audience is the biggest during the week. Tucker is like Klingons. He doesn't take prisoners. Pretty much everybody else on there during the week, phasers are constantly on stun. Okay? In our world, in the digital world, the people that the people in our line of work that are ruled by the algorithm, their phasers are on stun. Here on our platform, I don't want to be ruled by the crap we just described, so we're not taking prisoners either. Because if it's not worthy of that level of conflict, then why are we wasting our time?
Exactly.
Let's just go enjoy whatever the fruits of and accoutrements of Americana and have a better life and have more friends. We would only do this if it was worthy of this level of conflict, right?
Yes.
If it wasn't worthy of this level of conflict, guys, I probably would have had a different career path. I would have kept doing sports talk radio, might have ended up back in my home state of Michigan getting paid covering the home teams for the last 20 years. I only gave up all those options and avenues and came into an arena which would grant me far fewer friends because I came to the conclusion of what you just said. This is going to be a zero-sum game here. Either we're gonna pimp slap the spirit of the age back to the pit of hell, or it's going to do that to us.
Right.
And there won't be an either or. It's gonna or it won't be an and also. It's gonna be an either or. If it's not about that, then why are we doing any of this then? Because then it's just a sporting event,
yes.
right? Well, aren't the other sporting events a lot more fun than this? And you make a lot fewer enemies, right?
Right.
I'd rather do those. Okay, if I wanted to reduce this to a sporting event, I'd have stayed in the platform and format I was. No, this is for real life. We're playing as the devil says to Ray in a nefarious carol. We're playing for real stakes here, Ray. Pop Culture Tuesday is next. So let's say there's even a modicum of a chance what I said a little while ago could be right. I've been saying for a couple of months on the show, I'm just seeing some warning signs similar to what we saw in 2008. And then we had a massive financial sector crisis later in the fall as a result of those signs. And we're seeing some of those warning signs again. If that's the case, you never know, man. Now might be the ideal time to make your move in the real estate market before the next meltdown happens. But make sure you go in, though, with an agent you can trust, especially during these unprecedented times.
Bing.
Thank you. Where would you find such an agent? Well, the name kind of says it all. Head to this website. realestateagentsitrust.com is where you can go to get an agent who will come in, take charge of your situation, but then also remember that ultimately you're the one that's in charge. And they'll bring with them a fully verified and vetted track record of success as well. Just about anywhere in the country, we can probably connect you to one of these. A real estate agent you can trust at realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, let's get to Pop Culture Tuesday. This is when we look at the intersection each week between what's going on in pop culture and conservatism. Let's talk about the latest from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Black Widow, a movie that was supposed to be out last May, had, of course, been delayed numerous times as a result of COVID, finally got its release over the weekend. I predicted on the Deace Group Friday that I thought it would have one of the 4 weakest openings of any Marvel film in the history of the content for a couple of reasons. One, it's anticlimactic. The character's already dead, right, in the meta storyline of the cinematic universe. 2, there's streaming options available. You could watch it for money on Disney+. And then 3, maybe still a little hesitancy about going back to the theaters. The film did very well, and it didn't have one of the 4 worst openings, so I was wrong about that. It was, though, the 5th worst opening of any film that Marvel has opened so far. But when you look at what it did globally and via Disney+, they're saying it's well over $200 million. You've not had a chance to see this, correct?
Right.
All right, but Aaron, you have, right?
Correct, yeah.
All right, so we're going to make a quick review here, because I think the better conversation is where this whole thing is going. But we'll do this as spoiler-free as we can, although I don't know what we would spoil, Aaron, because there is no major cliffhanger here. There's nothing you're like, oh, wow. It just basically tells you about a side mission that Natasha Romanoff did between the events of Thanos arriving on Earth and Captain America Civil War. Okay? That just tells that story, and you learn more about her backstory. And I mean, it's okay. Some of the action's really good. Marvel, again, takes one of its classic villains, this time Taskmaster, completely retcons its origin and just deviates totally from its own subject matter. You know, that has been, if that's like my one consistent singular complaint, is they have done this with numerous villains over the years, and now this is the latest one with Taskmaster. Even the big reveal of who that really is, I won't spoil it, doesn't really, you're not like, you know, nothing like that at all. The after credit scene doesn't really move the overall narrative of the universe much further. It basically sets up I won't spoil it, but it basically sets up the Hawkeye series on Disney+, or at least an element of it. I will tell you, though, I thought the first act, Aaron, was really good. I loved the opening credits. The haunting version they did of Smells Like Teen Spirit. Mm-hmm. That might be the best opening credits I've seen in a Marvel movie yet. I mean, that was really, really well done. And I kind of thought about halfway through the film, I think this is going to be a lot better than I thought it was going to be. But then when she reconnects with her Russian, staged family and everything else, from that time forward, the main villain of the movie, who runs the Red Room and all that stuff, I actually thought the second half was pretty weak. I thought the first half was really good. The second half was really weak. And I'll also say this, I think I got her name wrong on my social media. It's Florence Pugh.
Florence, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She steals every scene she's in, including the scene she's in with Scarlett Johansson. Visibly outshines her from an acting standpoint. I mean, I thought she stole every scene she was in And if they're going to go with the storyline that she's going to replace her sister at some point in the MCU, which seems likely, and people were already speculating on this anyway. Listen, Florence Pugh is not terrible to look at. She's no Scarlett Johansson, but few women on this planet, frankly, are. But in terms of charisma in front of the camera, I thought she kind of blew her away, frankly. But what was your overall review?
So I went in this not really knowing what to expect, but not expecting much. It's one thing when you have a prequel that you're not really familiar with where the proceeding events or the events after whatever the prequel is to. You're not really sure what led up to that, but in this case we are. We have an entire Avengers Initiative storyline to build upon. So I went in with pretty low expectations as far as a story, an overall narrative. I thought it was good as a standalone film, not necessarily as part of some overarching narrative. I actually thought both halves were pretty equal in terms of their quality.
Okay.
I thought the big reveal actually of where the main objective lies for the movie was pretty amazing. Actually, I was not familiar with this story in the comics. It's pretty creepy and pretty amazing at the same time. The villain though was a little meh. He wasn't, he didn't seem overbearing whatsoever. I will say though, there is a theme that is kind of a repeat in some ways of WandaVision. There is a theme of just abject grief about these two sisters. They're not able to lead normal lives as you would expect or hope to lead. Maybe as a woman, and the theme of grief there, kind of along the lines of what Wanda Maximoff shows in WandaVision. I thought that was a positive as well, but overall, didn't really go in with high expectations. Thought it was a good standalone movie, standalone being the operative word there.
Yeah, you make good points I hadn't thought about, especially that last one you made. I'm still at the point, though, that the film to me afterwards was just kind of meh.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not terrible. It's just like I went, you know what? It's a summer day. I went to Menchie's. I loaded up at the ice cream bar. But like an hour and a half later, I forgot what I just had. Okay.
See, I'll put it this way. I'm not probably going to watch this within the next watch through of the MCU.
All right. I want to talk about where we think the MCU is going here in a second. But first, we've been telling you about Rough Greens for quite a while here on the show. It's that powder full of the vitamins, minerals, nutrients, likely missing from your pet's food because they strip that out of your dog's food at the store before it gets to the store like they do. With our people food. That's why we buy so many supplements nowadays. That's why your pet could use one as well. And Rough Greens is that supplement. But you may be wondering, hey, if I mix this in with my pet's food, will my pet still like the food that they're eating? Maybe they won't take to it. Well, let's find out. And we'll do it on our dime. Rough Greens will give you that first 14-day jumpstart bag for free. You pay a couple bucks for the shipping, but the bag is free right now to see if you don't see a difference in your pet in 2 weeks or less when you go to roughgreens.com. That's RUFF. That's how they spell it over there. Roughgreens.com. Call them at 833-ROUGH-DOG if that's simpler for you. 833-ROUGH-DOG or roughgreens.com. Again, get that first 14-day jumpstart bag loaded with all those vitamins, minerals, nutrients. Our dog Cap loves this stuff. Maybe your dog will or won't. Here's how you find out. Get the bag for free. Just pay for the shipping at roughgreens.com. All right, the overall narrative of the MCU. So now you can join this part of the conversation.
I'm in.
Loki's finale debuts tomorrow, so it's coming out this week. And I get the sense that it is going to introduce either that there is a multiverse or that it's been hidden from us in some way, that it's doing something that's going to push the overall story narrative forward, okay? But doesn't it seem as if so far nothing the MCU has offered has done that? It has pushed character arcs forward, right? Okay, so we saw Falcon become Captain America. We saw Wanda Maximoff finally become the full-fledged Scarlet Witch from the comic books. We're getting more backstory on Natasha Romanoff through Black Widow and kind of what makes her tick. We found out how the world overall recovered post blip and you know, post Infinity War and Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home, right? The second movie. But so that's what, 2 movies now, and this is going to be 3 TV shows. Do you guys have any idea? Like, very first post-credit scene, Iron Man 1, Nick Fury shows up with the Avengers Initiative file, right? Is it the end of Captain America where they go out in the New Mexico desert and there's Thor's hammer? Right? Like, you could see over the course of years where this is building to, okay? Do you guys have any clue where this is going?
No, and I'm glad you bring up the end credit scene, because this is a group that never would let anything go to waste. They would use those to do that. So you thought it was automatic that they would use entire shows to do that. But I don't know. Now she was in a ton of movies in and of herself, but now this Black Widow thing just seems like she never got her own. Let's give her one. I honestly don't expect any big reveal at the end of Loki based on what they're doing. I think they just had guys they felt they had to make goods, and we can do some creative writing in here. None of it's been bad. But they just don't seem like this is not the time, and trust us, and we'll get to it sooner or later. I mean, I thought that as great as WandaVision was, I thought that was a missed opportunity, because if you open up the door then with all the other shows, you can keep riffing off of that. The big one could have been once right out of that. And then they wouldn't have even had to add much in the other ones. They're just choosing not to do it, whatever their reasons are. But I don't think we're going to see anything serious out of Loki.
Aaron, is it possible that they're not doing it on purpose, thinking we could never possibly pull off what we just did as good or better ever again? So let's just tell, you know, connected but largely individualized stories that at points in times in the future, teams and people will intersect, but it's not really heading to some new meta narrative like we saw the first go around.
I think they're biding some time right now. I mean, in the universe of the MCU, if you know, they had a way of making the Fantastic believable. Like, every couple of years, the Earth was under some intergalactic threat. You know, I'm overstating it there. I think this is kind of a way to bide time and make the timeline seem a little bit more realistic. I don't want to say this. It could be that, because I don't really see... it's the same thing I said about WandaVision up until the last episode. The writers of some of these episodes and some of these shows, and definitely the movies as well, just have this like fetish for Easter eggs and intricate details and dropping hints and things like that and foreshadowing. They have this fetish for telling really, really good formulaic stories. I don't really see Kevin Feige. He's still the one running it,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
I don't really see him. I don't really see him just letting this go and just letting this essentially become a cash cow, because that's maybe not the main intent, but that's the effect of what this will be. So I still think that there will be something along the lines of another overall narrative and story arc that can definitely be done. And we've talked about who the next big villain might be, but I think it's good to let things kind of marinate and simmer for just a little bit longer. And who knows, in the things that we've seen so far, maybe they are dropping hints that we just have no clue about, but I'm a little bit dubious about that.
Here's one thing, I'm like Loki. I know he saw his whole future and that changed him, but like the last episode is 5. Like, I thought it's getting a little sugary. I mean, now this is just Loki's just the after school special character. I mean, I'm a little worried, to be completely honest.
I wonder if it may be many, many years before they go down the road of a coordinated mass event, just because how could you do better? How could you top what they just did? And so maybe the way you do that is you don't try. You just, you do more character, individualized or individually oriented stories instead. I don't know. Or maybe they don't know where they want this to go yet. That's a possibility too. Hey, we've been warning you about home title theft for quite a while here on the show. This is where cyber thieves use personal information that they can get from something like, say, your Facebook page, a maiden name, an address, the high school you graduated from, the kinds of things that we use to identify ourselves if we lost our password and verified who we were. And so they can get that from things like a Facebook data breach, which just happened, by the way, with 500 million accounts, names, addresses, that kind of personal information, and then go online where your home's title is kept, log in as you, make it look like you sold your home to them via a quick claim deed, and before you know it, you're out of your home and all of that equity. Don't let that happen to you. And that's what our friends at Home Title Lock do. In fact, that's all they do, is make sure that that doesn't happen to you. And right now you can get 30 free days of protection during this high-risk Facebook breach. Maybe if they were more concerned about protecting their data than they were censoring truthful information, things like this would not happen. Go to HomeTitleLock.com, use the promo code RADIO to get 30 free days of protection. Promo code RADIO at HomeTitleLock.com. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com. All right, final thoughts. What did we learn here today, gentlemen?
I want to go back to the conversation we had just last half hour in talking about the Branch Covidian cult and having a very intentional conversation about that. Todd, is there a reason why your little moniker is progressivism is cancer? Why isn't it progressivism is chickenpox? Why isn't it progressivism is E. coli? Why is it progressivism is cancer?
Because it's a death sentence. It's unambiguous. It's the same reason why I wanted to get to what is a cult. It's not just a word. It's an actual thing. And it's not value neutral. And what do we do with it? Cancer? Listen, when it killed my mom. So it wasn't going to be any other way unless there were very severe interventions. And even maybe then. That's why I say it.
Unless you cut it out. If there's still time.
That'll do it for today's program. We're back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Hall of Famer Glenn Beck here on Blaze TV. Until then, John 3:17.